Hi everyone, welcome back to the Social Distancing Zoologist in Conversation podcast series, where I'm talking to conservationists who have a passion for a particular species, ecosystem or environmental issue. Today I'm talking to Jenny Pearson, a zoologist with a passion for all things wildlife, natural world and conservation. She graduated with a degree in zoology from the University of the West of Scotland in 2016 and then achieved her master's degree in environmental and sustainability studies from the University of Strathclyde. Here, her work focused on plastic pollution, more specifically Nurdle pollution in the Firth of Forth. She now works in the Isle of Cumbrae at an outdoor education field centre that focuses on environmental education. She spent lockdown exploring and writing about her local wildlife near Glasgow and is here today to talk about plastic pollution and the Scottish wildlife near her. Good morning, Jenny.
Good morning.
How is lockdown going for you in Glasgow? Are you still managing to get out and about?
Yeah, I've recently discovered a little woodland area that's got a little lovely river running through it that is a 15-minute walk from my home that I had no idea ever existed before. So that has been really fun. So I've been down there pretty much every other day with my camera and my binoculars, which has been a lot of fun.
That's really good. So you're in Glasgow at the moment, but you're normally on the Isle of Cumbrae. Could you kind of tell people where it is and sort of when you move there and what sort of wildlife you get there as well?
Oh, the Isle of Cumbrae is just fantastic. It's a little island just off the west coast of Scotland. And there's only one town there. It's called Millport. So I think that most people in central Scotland will have at some point gone out for a bike ride around Millport. It's only 10 miles round. And I'm so fortunate to be able to work there. So I work at a little outdoor field centre that has historically been focused on marine studies, marine research. And now it's kind of an outdoor education centre. And I'm really missing the little island. It's a fantastic place, but you'll find all sorts of stuff out there. Um, it's kind of known worldwide for marine life and marine research. So you would porpoise, dolphins. Every now and again we'll get the occasional minke whale. A couple of years ago we had a pod of orcas that swam up past us, which was
Oh,
just
wow.
incredible.
So changing slightly, so if we move on to plastic pollution, quite a big question really, but I wondered if you could summarise the extent of the marine plastic problem for us, particularly in the UK.
Yeah, that is a good question. But it's quite tricky to answer. And plastic is absolutely everywhere. It's been recorded in every ocean, from the busiest of areas to the most remote. We find it on completely uninhabited islands in the middle of nowhere. We find them in Antarctica, in the Arctic, in the deepest ocean trenches. It's just completely dominated. It's everywhere. So I went out looking for a figure of how much plastic is out there. So I went onto the Surfers Against Sewage website, which you've probably heard of. They're a fantastic charity that works against marine litter and other types of pollution. And on their website, it says there is approximately 51 trillion pieces of microplastics in the oceans, which to me is just one of those unimaginable numbers.
Too big, isn't it? You just can't envisage it.
It actually hurts my brain trying to figure out that number. I can't think about it too much. So to me, that is completely incomprehensible, and I don't actually think it's too useful to talk in numbers. It's also really worth keeping in mind that plastic pollution is not exclusive to the marine environment. I was out walking the other day and I came across a swan's nest, this beautiful big structure, and both parents were there, and this was just in a freshwater pond just down the road from me, not far. And the female's perched on top, and it intertwined with all the twigs and sticks. There's a plastic bottle, there's a shopping bag, there's a crisp packet, and that just broke my heart. I just thought that's horrific. Um, so plastic really is everywhere.
Yeah, we've got the same thing on our swan's nest in the lake opposite. Same thing: plastic bag, plastic bottle.
It's heartbreaking, isn't it? I remember reading about them and saying they'll take anything to make their nests, but they're bringing in these little cygnets into the world, and that's the world that they're waking up to, is this world of plastic. That makes me really sad to think about that.
So you focused on nurdles. Can you tell us what nurdles are and why they're such a problem?
So nurdles are a funny little thing. I always think that their names sound really quite cute and innocent, but they're quite far from it. So essentially what nurdles are they are little plastic pellets. They're round, they're tiny, and they are about the size of a lentil. And they are central to the plastic manufacturing process. So when you have a plastic product, absolutely anything, whether it's a laptop or a water bottle or just absolutely anything you can think of that is plastic. They've probably been a Nurdle at some point. So these companies that makes the Nurdles will then sell them off to another company, and they will be shipped to that company, maybe in another factory. It could be within the same country or it could be across the world, and they get shipped off to them by train, truck, or ship. Unfortunately, the problem with them is that they're so small and they're so lightweight and they're so easily spilled. And throughout the whole of this process, they can be spilled. They might go down a drain in the warehouse. There might be a tear in whatever's holding them. They'll spill out of lorries, and quite often, actually, what happens is they fall overboard on ships. There's been cases where huge containers of these things have just tipped over the edge of a ship, and people find them washed up on their beaches. With Nurdles, the main problem with them is accidental ingestion. They look remarkably like fish eggs. And another problem with them is that they act as attachment points for other invisible chemical pollutants that are already kind of present in the water, particularly persistent organic pollutants, so POPs, which, when ingested, become a bioaccumulator.
What was your Nurdle study focused on?
So I went out to an area called the Firth of Forth. What I wanted to do was identify the pollution hotspots. And then in doing so, I wanted to identify features that these hotspots had in common. So in that way, I could almost create a formula for a pellet hotspot so that we could maybe try and identify areas that might be highly polluted just from looking at a map. So I chose 18 beaches to visit, and I chose a mixture of kind of geographical features that these beaches would have. So over each month, I went to these beaches a couple of times, and I took my quadrat and my pen and a little notebook and a timer. And all I did was I sat my quadrat down on the ground and on each of these beaches and set my timer for 5 minutes, and I just counted however many Nurdles I could see within the quadrat within those 5 minutes.
And what did you find?
So according to my own findings, I was able to make a kind of pellet pollution scale. So I categorised 4 of those 18 beaches as heavily polluted. So that to me meant that there was more than 10,000 pellets on these beaches. That's what I estimated was. So what it was also allowed me to do was to look at where the pellets might be coming from. And one thing that has been kind of suggested in previous research is that pellets are likely to accumulate in close to areas that they are being used. So estuaries are a fantastic place to go looking for Nurdles because industries tend to kind of accumulate around water, around places that they can have ships coming in. Factories tend to be based by water, and that is where these pellets were being used. That's where they were being spilled. So I kind of assumed from looking at the information that I had gathered was that the pellets were coming from inland Scotland somewhere. They weren't coming from out in the North Sea into Scotland. They were coming from Scotland.
I think that's a problem all the way around the coastline. Do you think it's particularly bad in the Firth of Forth, or do you think there's something across Scotland that you'd find?
So yeah, it's definitely a problem all over the country. And if you go onto Google and you type in Nurdle pollution, pretty much any estuary has a Nurdle pollution problem. All over the UK. I was reading an article from Cornwall yesterday that was saying how many were washed up in Cornwall. And Cornwall is a bit more exposed, where it's more likely that they're being washed up on Cornwall rather than they're being used in Cornwall. So it's really interesting.
So it works both ways. So down there, it's from the sea, whereas up in Scotland, perhaps more the other way around.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So how do you think industries, and what's the next step? How do industries need to change, and how do we go about tackling this?
It's a tricky one. We need to, when looking at the industries, what we need to do is put a bit of pressure on them to be less careless with their handling. We need to that would be solving the problem kind of at the root. They're not going to stop using Nurdles. That's not going to happen. People are not going to stop using plastics unless we have some real systematic change, which will be very difficult to achieve. But what we need to do is put a bit of pressure on them to say, look, you need to stop spilling these. You just need to be more careful. And the way to do that with them is we need to show them that they're losing money from this. So they're losing capital, they're losing their product by spilling them out on these beaches. They're not being able to use these products. But even at that, if they were to stop using Nurdles, there's still millions of them out there. But from what I studied, the kind of conclusion that I came to was that every area in the world is completely different, and every area needs to be studied individually, and we need to identify hotspots in order to clean them up. And if we identify hotspots, it will become the most cost-effective and time-effective way of kind of tackling this pollution, because resources are we only have a few resources out there, so we want to focus our resources on the most polluted areas. But unfortunately, scientists can't go out and count pellets on beaches every day. So that is where people can make a serious difference. So if people are interested in citizen science, a really, really simple and easy one is the Great Nurdle Hunt, which is based, I think it's from a charity in Scotland actually called FIDRA. They've set that up. It's a really simple thing to do. All you can do is every time you're out for a walk on the beach, you can take as much time as you want, set a timer on your phone, and just take some time to look for pellets. You don't need to collect them, just leave them where they are, and just for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, count as many as you can, and just once you've done that, go onto your website and just record it, and that is one way for them to look at on a wide scale where are there real pollution problems that we can then focus our efforts on going and cleaning them up.
That's fantastic. I'll put a link to that in the description for this podcast. That's all we've got time for today. Jenny Pearson, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
That's all for today, but be sure to check out Jenny's Instagram and blog, which are both linked on the screen. Next time I'll be chatting to someone about the use of AI in ecology, so be sure to join us then. Until then, bye for now.